Restoration without direction isn't actually restoration, it's just relief. And Jesus doesn't just relieve Peter, he redefines expectations. What comes next is one of the most shocking things any human being could hear from the risen Lord in verse 18. That's the moment the conversation shifts. Because now we're not just talking about restoration anymore, we're talking about direction. We're talking about trajectory, about the shape Paul's whole life is going to take. And here's what's stunning: Jesus does not sugarcoat this moment, he doesn't hide it. The same man who once said, I'll lay down my life for you, and then couldn't stand by a charcoal fire of a few hours, is now being told, you know what? You will actually lay down your life for me. Not because Peter finally got strong enough, but because grace is about to carry him further than self-confidence ever could. And that is the difference. Before, Peter's courage was loud and shallow. Now it's going to be quiet and spirit formed and real. John ensures we don't miss it. And he slips in a helpful note so no one misinterpret this. Jesus said this to reveal by what kind of death Peter would glorify God. The phrase, stretch out your hands, was understood already in the ancient world as a clear reference of crucifixion. Jesus isn't speaking in riddles. He's telling Peter that the road of restored disciple leads straight to the cross. He doesn't say this eventually, not metaphorically. He says this literally, historically, and boldly. And then, immediately after saying all of that, two words: follow me. Let that sit in your hearts for a second. Jesus has just revealed Peter's death in detail. And his invitation, after all, it is not, but don't worry, and it won't be as bad as it sounds. It just says, follow me. As if the death he just described is not a footnote to the disciple Jesus is calling Peter into. It is the discipleship. The cross is not the cost of following Jesus. The cross is the shape of following Jesus. Here's what's happening theologically in this command of following in verse 19 is the same command Jesus gave Peter in the very beginning of the gospel in chapter 1. John is forming a literary arc across the whole 21 chapters to say this is what follow me always meant: a life that looks like his life, a death that echoes his death. Peter's martyrdom is described not as a tragedy, but as theology. Why? Because verse 19 says he would glorify God in his death. Church, this is the Christian vision of human life at its most radical and most beautiful. That even the manner of your dying can be an act of worship. That a life poured out for Christ is not a life wasted. We love always the beautiful stories of restoration. We love that Jesus meets us in failure and recommissions us. But we quietly assume that restoration means relief, that grace will put us back in a safer, more comfortable path. And Jesus said, no way, Jose. Grace puts you back on my path, and my path leads always to the cross. A life shaped like Jesus' own, a death that echoes his,